Olá, Davis, meu nome é Jacob Moura, estamos aqui para uma senhora entrevista com Emily Fortuna, né? Emily Fortuna no canal aqui, galera, tudo bom? Então vocês vão, agora a gente vai ter o Balta aqui e o Cleverson, que vão ser o host dessas entrevistas, né? E vocês podem estar enviando as suas perguntas ali pelo chat, que a gente vai estar traduzindo e passando para ela ali quando vocês enviarem, tá ok? Então, a gente vai dar início agora, o Baltieri aqui a esse aqui. Tudo bom, Baltieri?
Tudo bem, pessoal?
E o Cleverson aqui.
Estar aqui.
Cleverson também. Temos aqui o Falso também.
Galera. E aí, galera?
E o Thiago. E ela, Emily Fortuna!
Hello.
Welcome to Brasil, Emily.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. It's so great to meet you all.
Eu vou passar agora a palavra para o Balta, que vai dirigir essa entrevista ali, beleza? Então, Balta, com você.
Sure. Hi, Emily. First of all, thank you for joining us today. We are very honored to have you here. So iconic person here. So we have a few questions for you today, and starting from some more personal questions than some more technical questions. And
sure. I want to also say I am so thrilled to meet you all. So thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you. The first thing I want to ask you is, I saw on LinkedIn that you're acting also. Yeah,
that's true. Yes.
Very awesome. And how did you manage it? How was your story behind your life acting, writing code, and working at Google?
Yeah. So, oh goodness, I think I'm the sort of person that just likes to do many different things, and at my core, I really like to do storytelling in all sorts of forms. And so one form of that is acting and telling like fictional stories. And another part of that is doing presentations and telling truthful stories about technology. And I think I like both for different reasons. So the acting is very fun because you get to be silly and be someone that explore sort of fictional worlds and imagine what could be. And then the technology side, I love because it's a way to create things that can very directly impact people and help people in their daily lives. And I've alternated for a while when I went to grad school, and I didn't do any acting at all, and I really missed it. So I think these are two very important parts of my life, and I can't really do just the one. But yeah, they both kind of tickle different parts of my brain, if you will.
Nice. They complement each other, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I also, people have told me, so I also like to do improv. I'm not sure if you're familiar with improv comedy.
Yeah.
In Brazil? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah,
okay, cool. So I like to do that as well. And I think that also is very helpful in work or in presentations when things go bad or when things don't go as expected. Being flexible and being able to work with them.
Nice, very nice. Thank you for your answer. Cleverson?
Well, that's great. You kind of already answered one of my questions. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you grew up, and what you like to do as a child, and now as a grown up.
So I grew up in Texas, so the very southern part of the U.S. And oh goodness, I'm actually like I actually came to computer science relatively late. I wasn't one of those people that was like, oh yeah, I was always programming a calculator. That wasn't me. in fact, I didn't do the acting until later as well. It was something that I always wanted to do, but I kind of I hadn't taken that step to actually do it. Before that, like, I think my first introduction to programming was I went to some summer camp, and I play violin and piano, and we had this robot that we were supposed to like build this contraption and make it do things for 30 seconds. And I was like, well, that's a lot of time, because we had like all these little things like running around, but like balls falling or going through the air, that's pretty quick. And so I was like, oh, I'll program the robot to play some music, and I'll take up lots of time. And my team was like, oh wow, that's so cool. And like for me, I think I was just drawing on my music background. I didn't think it was anything special, but they were like, oh, you're so good at that. But I think really I didn't start taking computer science more seriously until high school and college, when I realized just how many different ways you can apply computer science, because it can be applied to any field. And that's the cool thing with like writing mobile apps too, is they can help all sorts of applications of people with all sorts of problems. And so I kind of, in a way, chose computer science because it allowed me to do everything. Like I didn't have to choose one particular field, because I was interested in a bunch of different areas. I was interested in chemistry and architecture and music, and yeah. And then I think, yeah, so to answer your question about now as an adult, I think, like, you know, it's been a continuous exploration of like finding the things that are the best fit for my skills. And I'm particularly, so now I was a software engineer at Google, and now I'm what's called a developer advocate. And I don't know if you all know what a developer advocate does, but basically I educate the external community about how to use developer tools. And and so like that involves technical skills like writing code and doing presentations and things. But I love it because I'm able to combine my skills of storytelling or connecting with people with the technology. So I'm super excited to have found this field and be able to connect with you all.
Yeah, that's so cool. You're a multi-talented person.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That explains why your videos are so good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Every time that I watch some Flutter Web video or your videos on Google YouTube channel, I saw this woman. She speaks so very well. She speaks
well.
Thank
you.
Oh, that's nice. That's your secret, acting.
Yeah, take improv classes. They're very fun.
Yeah, nice.
It's your opportunity to explore your silly side.
Yeah. I have another question here. If you have any plans to come to Brazil?
Not immediately, but I would love to. I think the closest I've been to Brazil is Ecuador, which is on the same continent, but on the other side of the continent. I would love to. I love the rainforest, and yeah, I know Brazil has a ton of that. I need to study some Portuguese though.
Yeah.
I speak Spanish, and so that means that I can kind of sometimes read Portuguese, and I kind of sometimes understand some of your words, but I need to actually study that.
Yeah, that will be fun. There's a lot of good places here. If you like nature or some kind of that, you will fall in love here. We have some pretty amazing beaches and natural resorts here. It's a good place to visit, and you are most welcome here.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I mean, as you say, I would like to come visit, and I'd like to meet you all in person. That would be great. So I just have to persuade my boss. So we'll work on that.
Sure. And Emily, tell me, how did you start working with Google?
So that came out of my work with grad school, actually. So as a grad student, I during the summer you could do an internship, and I interned at Google. I did interviews and all that, and then so I started interning on the Dart team, actually, like early days. And then I went back to grad school, and then at that point, I decided that I didn't want to get my PhD, and so I was like, okay, well, guess I need to go find a job. And so basically, if you intern at Google, you can it's called a conversion process. You do some interviews, but it's fewer interviews than if you had never interviewed or never worked with Google. So I did those, and I got my job offer. I worked on a couple of teams at Google. I worked on Dart. I worked on a machine learning team that did computer image processing, and then I came back to Flutter because they're good people. They're a very good team.
All right. And any other questions regarding your personal life?
Actually, yeah. What do you think is harder, acting or developing?
That's a good question. I think they're challenging for different reasons. So I think to make it as an actor, to really make your living as an actor, there's a lot of chance that is involved. There's a lot of things that are outside of your control. So for example, say someone is writing a film and they have a part for a male actor that has to play this part. Like, they don't want to see me audition for that part. Or things like, they want a 60-year-old woman. I am not a 60-year-old woman, so they don't want me to audition. And so I guess, so there's more limitations for, like, there's fewer opportunities, there's specific opportunities. Whereas, like, if you have a software engineer position, if you know the skills, like, there's some luck of, like, oh, did you submit at the right time and all that, but, like, that part feels easier. Of course, there can be, there's certainly, like, technical challenges on the software engineering side, and sometimes, like, dealing with large projects and just being able to hold all of the state of, like, how your project is organized in your head, that can be very like, it could take me sometimes, like, when I was working on the Dart team, it would take me like 20 minutes to just kind of remember how everything is organized, and then I can start working. So that could be challenging too. So I guess they're both challenging, but in different ways. I feel like the acting has more luck, but and also the challenging thing with acting is it doesn't have a clear right answer because it's art, and so sometimes you can love what you do, but other people don't because that's their opinion. Whereas often I find it very satisfying with computer science. It's like, if the program runs, it works. Obviously, there's a good way to do it, or sometimes a better way to write it. But yeah, that could be satisfying. It's just like, got it running.
Nice.
I think that's all for the personal questions, right, Andre?
Yeah, that's it. And now come the technical way, and I think more personal question probably will grow as soon as the people start to asking on the chat. But let's start for a very good question here. We discussed a little bit of this before. we start this live. And on your opinion, Emily, what do you think that Flutter's advantage before other technologies like React Native, Xamarin, or native development?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on your needs. There are completely good reasons to choose those other technologies depending on your situation. So one strong differentiator between Flutter and say React Native is React Native connects to all those native components of your mobile device. So for example, like the buttons, the system buttons, those are all native components. And because of that, so on the one side, that means that React Native doesn't have to reinvent the wheel and like recreate all of those components. But on the downside, that means that it has to figure out how to talk to each of those pieces. And sometimes that communication can be slow. So that's, whereas, as you may know, Flutter redraws all of the things to create itself. So it's its own rendering library. And so, of course, so we have better performance. But yeah, it's not technically the actual native component. It looks very close, but there's that. So and I guess another reason that you might want to use React Native is if your team of developers all uses JavaScript. If they already know JavaScript, that's a great reason to use React Native. On the flip side, though, like if you want a more type-safe language, and you want some stronger guarantees, being able to compile things ahead of time or know how your program is going to run, then Dart is, I would say, a safer alternative for that. And then on the native side, again, like if you have a team that already knows Kotlin or Java, and you don't need to write an iOS app, then maybe that's the right answer. But the other thing is, Flutter has this sort of reactive development system that allows you to do things like hot reload, which, as we've all said, is like our favorite thing ever. and so that alone, even if your team, say, already knows Java, for example, maybe that is a good reason to investigate Flutter, because like that alone just speeds up development so much, because you don't have to restart your app and wait for it to compile and load up onto the device, and it's such a game changer in my opinion. Now I know that there's also at I/O the Android team announced Jetpack Compose, which is a hot reload like style system. So that is an option too. I think that Flutter is certainly much more mature and stable than Jetpack Compose. So there's lots of factors to weigh in, but I am a huge fan of Flutter, and I hope that it can, satisfy your needs. And if not, like, please let us know, file bugs, and we're happy to like work on that.
Nice, thank you.
And Emily, tell us a little bit about the Flutter team. How is working with the Flutter team for you?
Oh my gosh, I love them so much.
So they're great. We want to know why.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that we are able to have so much fun on our YouTube channel and on Twitter and in presentations. It's because we have a great team, and it's a great group of people that are supporting each other and helping them, be their best versions of themselves. So the Flutter team as a whole, like, kind of, you may have heard about the history of Flutter, but if not, I'll give like a super brief version. They were just looking for a better way to build UIs, and they actually came from the world of the web and Chrome, and they kind of stripped down Chrome's and the web way of layouts. And they're like, oh, but what if we could do this better? What if we didn't have backwards compatibility? And instead, they came up with this great way of developing UIs originally for mobile, and now they're also going back to the web. But so I guess they came with this idea, or they developed this idea for a really cool technology. But I think one of the team's biggest strengths is that they are very receptive to feedback from users. So feedback from the community, feedback from, we have a user experience research team that runs all sorts of experiments with Flutter users. Like, they have people come in and watch them program, and they see what challenges they're facing, and then they give that feedback to the team, and we make changes. And then they also take feedback from us, the developer advocates, the developer relations team, and saying, like, we're seeing these challenges that people in the community are having. We need to update or change the system to make it better. So there's that. And then I think in general, like, the team is very, has a good sense of humor, and that makes it fun to work for too.
Nice. And how big is the Flutter team?
Oh goodness, they've been growing a lot, and I don't actually have any good sense of the numbers. I would say we're in the like 50-person some range, but that's kind of made up. So don't hold me to that number.
All right. No, there was another answer here regarding born of the Flutter framework, but you already answered that. Okay. So it's now up to you, Cleverson.
Yeah.
Your time.
Yeah, I saw that too. She already answered that, but it's okay. It's been a fun conversation. So, which were the biggest challenges that you faced during the creation of Flutter, you and Flutter team?
Ooh, biggest challenge.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple ways I could answer that. So the first one is sort of explaining to people why we are important. So when we first were announced, a lot of people were just like, why did Google just reinvent React Native? And I think the answer is like, the Flutter team definitely was inspired by React Native. There was a lot of great ideas there, but they wanted to take it in a different direction and see what they could accomplish. And so I think sometimes with inventions, it's not necessarily the first version that is great, but it's the second version, because you learn from the challenges that the first version had. And so we tried to explore from that. But I think a lot of people were just like, oh, Google's just reinventing React Native. That's one challenge. Another challenge, I think, is I think a lot of people, when they hear the words cross-platform, they think that means bad. And we really want to show them that no, just because it's easy to run on both platforms doesn't mean that you have a bad product. So that's, I think, a challenge of messaging and getting out there. But I think that, at least for the people that have tried Flutter, they see that this is the case. But I think new people are a little maybe hesitant. And I think the last thing is, as I said this before, I think the thing that makes me most excited about Flutter is just the power of hot reload, independent of cross-platform things. And I think it's just like, it's such a game changer for the way that you develop programs. And so I think a challenge is people maybe don't always recognize that when they're looking at technologies, that like this, it doesn't matter if you don't need a cross-platform solution. Flutter is still an excellent way to do that, because this development system with hot reload just makes you so much more fast and productive. So yeah, I think helping people understand those ideas are the challenges that we have.
Nice. I think one of the best things in Flutter is actually the hot reload.
Yes,
really,
definitely.
really awesome. Also, I came from the website, and one thing that I had in mind before moving to mobile is that I want to have the practice that I had to web development on mobile side. And there were two things that make me go to Flutter side, which is I can use Visual Studio Code for for my code editing, no need for an IDE. And
Yay!
The second one is to use hot reload. That is really
awesome. Absolutely. I know I'm such a fan of those tools. It really makes your life. It makes development so fun.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case. Sometimes it can be frustrating. But not with Flutter.
Emily, you have another question here. Flutter had been in beta for such a long time. Then we got a few releases recently, right? And there was some kind of pressure regarding pushing the new release, release the final version, the time to market. How was the side, the business side of Flutter for this first releases?
I mean, so I think we, if you had asked me what was one of the challenges of Flutter maybe 6 months ago, before Flutter became 1.0, I would have told you that a lot of people don't trust it because it's not stable. And so I think there was a lot of pressure and motivation to hit that stable point so that, then people would trust it. Of course, now we're in the stable, and I think there's the team. We want to continue to be iterating and showing that we're actively working on things, especially when in certain events, for example, like Google I/O come out. But we also, it's a careful balance between that and you have to balance between producing new things quickly versus spending a lot of time on like one big new feature that might take a longer period of time. You can't always do that if you're always just rushing to have the next big thing. So I think there's a balance, and our team, it's a large, especially between Flutter and Dart, it's a quite large team. And so while on the surface, it seems like, oh yes, we're always bringing out new things, we are giving space for different groups, subgroups of Flutter or Dart to spend longer on some of these harder problems. One that's coming down the pipeline soon that hasn't been released yet is the non-nullable by default changes to Dart. And that's going to be a big change. Like the language team has been thinking very deeply about all these different ways that you can write code and how that changes the semantics of the language. And then we have people on the team writing tools so that you can auto-convert your code. But sometimes you can convert it, but there might be a few manual changes that you need to do just to make your code like truly as performant as you might want. So I guess that's one example of like a longer-term thing. I feel like I got a little off topic here. But basically, I want to say that like there's a bunch of different pieces, and teams are working at different rates depending on their features, and we're trying to iterate to give you new things as soon as we can.
Right, thank you.
It's good that you went off topic because that's the next topic in our conversation, actually. When did you start working with Dart, and how did you get into it? Do you like working with Dart? How is it?
Yeah, so I I think I mentioned when I started at Google, I started on Dart actually before it was released. So that tells you how long I've been at Google. It's been a while. But yeah, so I was working on Dart before it was public, and it initially, if you're familiar with the history of Dart, it initially started out as a web programming language, and it was inspired a lot by Java in terms of syntax. So it was geared towards being like a simplified version of Java, or if you know Java, then you can come to Dart, and it's more lightweight than Java, because Java can be a bit verbose at times. But then, things have evolved, and of course, Dart is no longer just a web programming language; it's a mobile and not web, but also desktop and all these things. And yes, there are more languages in the space that have continued to evolve, and so Dart needs to evolve as well. One thing that I found surprising, so I mentioned that I also worked on a team in machine learning, and so when I changed to that team, I wasn't working on Dart, or wasn't using Dart anymore. And, I was surprised. I really missed Dart. It's there are a lot of, nice little lightweight features that I was like, oh, I can't do that anymore. And, I think different people have different opinions on it. Some people are diehard Dart fans. And for me, I think I came to it being like, okay, it's a functional language. Yeah, it does what I need. And I mean that functionally as in, yes, it suits my uses. But then, yeah, when I didn't have it, I missed it. So I think it was just sort of, I appreciated it once it was gone. And then I came back to Dart, and I was like, oh, this is so much better. And I'm super excited that we're iterating and adding new features to make it even better. Because, yeah, as we become, we're increasingly, as Flutter becomes more popular, Dart is becoming more frequently compared to Swift and Kotlin, as it should be. And so we need to continue to innovate in that space and make it fun and exciting for people to use in programming.
Nice. And for how long have you been working with Dart?
Close to 7 years. Can you believe that? Okay. So that's a lie. Maybe it's more like 5, because I was on that other team. But yeah, 7 years ago that I started working at Dart.
Okay, great. Andrew?
Yeah, there's a question here. Excluding Dart, which other languages do you prefer? I know Dart is your favorite, but
no, it's all good.
If you can't choose Dart, which one is your favorite?
I'm a big fan of Python. So Python does not have all the type safety that Dart does, but it's very lightweight. I think it's great for scripting up little utility command line scripts. I often prefer to use it instead of Bash, because Bash I think is completely unreadable. But if I need to do some sort of command line little things, Python's my friend. What else? Yeah, I feel like Python is really my favorite utility. I've done some. I actually, I think C++ these days, new C++, is also pretty excellent. I am really excited about all the new things that are coming. And new, more modern features like auto pointers and so on. That makes C++ in the early days was very unfortunate, or not unfortunate, but frustrating to work with. And so yeah, I think that's, if you're doing lower level stuff and you need manual memory management, modern C++ pretty good. But Python is my preferred.
Nice, thank you.
Well, and for you, what's the future of Dart? You told a little bit about evolving and going forward with the community, but for you, what's the future of Dart?
I think the future of Dart is increasingly community driven. And so what I mean by that is our language designers are listening much more to the needs of our community and evolving it that way. So things like non-nullable by default. There's people thinking about things like extension methods and sealed classes. So I think the future of Dart, and you know, we of course welcome you to like give us more suggestions. So and here's one that I think will make a lot of people excited: optional semicolons. But so yeah, there's a lot of things coming down the pipeline that, and I want to caution you, don't, just because I said all these things, some of these things are going to be further out than the non-nullable by default. I think is one that they're actively working on right now, and you can expect it much sooner. But they have been discussing all of these things and working on them. So the future of Dart is I hope, one that is increasingly serving all of your needs, and something that you can be excited about and enjoy using to write code.
It's very nice to have these words. That's because we see a lot of companies driven by community these days, and this is it's obvious, right? The right language to people write programs, write software. So if the people don't accept this very well, the language is fitted to that. But I think what Flutter and the art team has been doing is a little bit different, because I can feel that they really hear the community and really deliver what community wants. So that's a good point, and I want to say congratulations to your team.
Oh, thanks. I'll pass that on to them.
And another question here is regarding Flutter for other platforms. We saw that we had Flutter for Web now, and we have Flutter for desktop, and this is really, really awesome. But when do you feel, if it will happen, that we can write a single code to these multiples devices for web, for desktop, for mobiles? Do you think we are close to this?
Oh, goodness. I mean, so it's hard for me to give concrete dates. I wish I could. I think part of it is, as you know how development goes, you work on something, you give an estimated time, and then it becomes hard. The problem is harder than you thought, and so it takes longer. So on the one side, like, technically you can do that now. You have your code, but as you all know, that there's some limitations to that for the types of programs that you can write. I wish I had a better answer for you. I don't have a specific timeline. All I could say is stay tuned and know that the people are working on that, and they're super excited to get it out. So they really want it to be soon. I wish I could give you more specifics, but that's all I've got.
That's nice. We just want to hear that the team is excited about that.
Absolutely.
This is the way. Right.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll definitely stay tuned for those announcements. Well, here's a question by Samuel Oliveira here from Yatec. Okay, he said we have two interesting fronts for web development. It's Flutter Web and Angular Dart. His question is, where does one begin and the other ends? What's the influence about one into another? Which one we use in what context? Can you tell us a little about that?
That is a great question, Samuel. So nice job. I think so in general, Flutter Web is a good use for more sort of appy style websites. What I mean is like these sort of progressive web app type things where it's kind of like a single page, you click through things, you have a bunch of visual elements that are moving around and so on. What is probably not the best use case of Flutter Web is if you wanted to implement, say, Wikipedia with Flutter. Because like that's a bunch of text, it's like pages clicking around. That I think Angular Dart is your better use case for. So I think the way of thinking about it is if you have a much more traditional web page, then Angular Dart is the way to go. And if you have a more visually oriented type web page or web app, then Flutter Web is kind of your answer to that.
Nice.
Very nice.
Thank you. So another hard question here. Why did you choose Dart for Flutter? That's because we have Java, Kotlin, C#, a lot of other languages. We have also TypeScript that's superset for JavaScript.
Yeah.
And why Dart?
That's a good question. So, the Flutter team initially did not want to use Dart. They tried a bunch of other languages. They tried JavaScript. They tried, I don't have the whole list because I actually wasn't there. I was on the Dart team. But they tried many different things, and nothing quite got them. What they wanted was a very fast development experience, and they wanted the final production version to be very fast and performant, so that your app wasn't janky and when you scrolled and all that stuff. And the reason that Dart works so well is because, so I mentioned that it was originally designed as a web programming language, and it compiled to JavaScript, and then it also had this VM so that you could compile the bytecode, be super fast, and so on. And so Flutter was like, oh, we could make use of that because we can take that VM and use it for hot reload to have that super fast iteration cycle. And then we can have there's like a different sort of output version of the VM that compiles to native ARM x86 code, machine instructions. And so that way, that combination of like being able to run quickly while you're kind of interpreting your code or with hot reload, not actually interpreted, but yeah. And then having that being able to compile down to native machine instructions, that was a pretty unique combination that most languages don't have. Most languages try to be strongly typed, compile everything, and then you go. That's like your C++, Java, C, all those, that whole world class of things. And then you have your scripting languages like JavaScript and Python and Ruby and all these things that are like, just interpret as you go. Obviously there's more nuance, but that's at a high level. And so, yeah, Dart was kind of this really interesting in-between area, and it was perfect for hot reload technology. And I'll also say, Wim Leeler, he was a developer advocate on our team previously, and he wrote this really good article on Hacker Noon called Why Flutter Uses Dart. It is in English. Perhaps someone would want to translate it, maybe, I don't know. But I would encourage you all to check it out because he really goes into the details of what makes Dart great for Flutter.
Nice, thank you.
Great. Well, we know that Google supports a lot of technologies to build web applications, and some community members like to go into very hard fights discussing which one is the best. But we want to know, is there any support from the Angular team to use Dart and the Java team to use Android? Any incentives to do so?
Sorry, say your question one more time again. I think I misunderstood.
Google develops a lot of frameworks for web, okay?
Yes.
And we want to know if is there any incentives for people working with Angular to use Dart, or any incentives for people working with Android to use Java?
So for Android to use Java, I mean, but they can, right? Oh, you're just saying it. Okay. So yeah, so
because I mean, why should I just use Java?
Java versus
there
Kotlin.
are another platform on the way.
I see. Okay, that's what I was confused about. I was like, but they can. No, it's all good. So I think it really just depends on you and your team's skill set. So if you are a JavaScript like fanatic and like you know all the ins and outs of like what's gonna make JavaScript slow and I want to like really I know that when I do a for loop this way it's slow and if I do it this way it's better, so I should do the for each version or some things like that. Then like by all means, JavaScript is a great solution if that's like where your set of skills are. Same with Java. If you're a Java expert, then like you're gonna be much faster than like you stumbling trying to learn Kotlin. But as time evolves, like maybe with say Angular Dart in that case, like maybe you want stronger types, and so Dart can provide that. And so maybe that getting over that learning curve of initially learning a maybe unfamiliar language is worth it. Same with Kotlin. Like Kotlin has a lot of really nice language features, and it's much more terse. It's much more concise than Java. So maybe it's worth investing that time to learn a new thing to then be much more productive in the future. So I think it really, but if like you have 10 people and they all know Java, then it probably doesn't make sense to like spend time for 10 new people to learn it. So it's kind of a, what does everyone know?
Yeah, it depends on the project, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for answering the question. I think we're done for the scripted questions. We're now gonna open to the community a little bit. Okay.
Great.
Yeah, and I already had a question here. Does Google have a long-term commitment to maintain Dart and Flutter? Wow, that's nice.
They do. So yes, we've got AdWords, the big app that is making Google so much money, is written in Dart. So that is, and Flutter actually. The app version is written using Flutter. And then also we recently announced assistants. So the Google Home Max. I'm blanking on the right version of the name of the little Google Home devices that you can have that are the smart devices. The assistant team is working on writing those views all in Flutter, and some of the versions of that have already shipped already. So short answer is yes, and there are more teams that are working on Dart and Flutter that I can't tell you about yet, but when they come out, stay tuned. So yes, Google is investing in Flutter for sure.
Nice to have. Clarison, any other question? I have one other here.
Yeah, I do. I watched the presentation of Flutter 1.0 when it was live, and I thought it was awesome. Okay, and one thing that I liked, other than the hot reload, obviously, was the way it integrated with that tool called what's the name of the tool?
Visual Code?
Flare?
Flare, yes.
Flare. So, is there any other tools that accompany Flutter that help us develop better code or better animations and stuff like that?
Lottie, there's Lottie from Airbnb. I think they are porting for Flutter also.
Yeah, I haven't tried it myself, but I know that people are working on that, which is super exciting, and a lot of people use that, so I look forward to that as well. So yeah, Flare, and then also like at Google I/O, our talk also used Flare, so that's a pretty cool one. In terms of animations, I think those are the two that I know of, that like big visual graphic creation tools. There's other companies that are creating important plugins. For example, Square is a payments company, and they have a plugin that allows you to take secure payments. Just because, that's when you're dealing with money, you want to work with someone you trust. You don't want some random person to implement a payments plugin. Who knows if they're taking your pennies? Like, that could be a problem. So that's another company that has created something that you can work on, connect with Flutter. I'm trying to think of other tools. I think stay tuned. There's more to come that's not yet released.
Okay,
I
great.
know people have been chatting. I haven't been reading that.
It's just some questions I'm pasting here.
Okay.
Nothing important, just to not change my screen.
Okay.
And there's a question here regarding Firebase. Some Firebase improvements, and use it on big projects. Do you have anything to talk about this?
About Firebase? Yeah. We have more people that are starting to work on Firebase in the upcoming months. So expect to see like more improvements and more work on getting those plugins much more robust and better to work with. So yeah, I look forward to the improvements on those too. I use those plugins a lot.
Yeah, they're so easy to develop with Firebase.
Yeah. But sometimes you can hit some areas that are a little confusing. So yeah. we want to make that better.
Nice, thank you.
Regarding security, do you have any people are asking if you're going to implement some kind of plugin to work with OAuth for authentication? Because right now we kind of do stuff a little bit outside the curve.
Yeah, so there is you could use like Google Sign-In. I thought, do we not have the OAuth plugin as well? I thought we did. I could have sworn. If not, let me tell you what. I'm gonna look into that, and if not, I'm going to talk to our team, because that's definitely a very important thing. I thought we did, but I could be wrong. So.
Yeah, the case is right now my team is working on a product, and they're trying to do implicit authentication, and they are having a little bit of a hard time.
Okay.
Where the question came from.
Yeah. All right. I will. I think there's if you can either file a bug, or we can talk a little bit afterwards. I'd like to find out more about what are the challenges, a little bit more about authentication. I know Apple announced their own sign-in authentication system, and the Flutter team is working on connecting Flutter with that as well, so that you can have different ways to sign in depending on who you want to do your authentication. So
good news.
So yeah, let's look at that. I'll get back with you on the OAuth in general, though.
Okay, great.
All right. I have a question here for myself. I saw that Apple just launched Swift UI, which is kind of declarative way, so like a Flutter.
They have lots of ideas that are similar, for sure.
Yeah, I can tell that they are copying, but what do you think
they
about
were inspired?
Yeah, they were inspired. That is the right answer. What do you think about this declarative syntaxes for the language? Do you think this is the future? For example, this is very good because we can isolate the semantic language for example, HTML, XML, XAML, and other languages, and focus just on write on the back. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so I think the short answer is the fact that you're seeing so many different declarative frameworks with like Swift UI, Jetpack Compose, Flutter, React Native, like all these things that have these similar ideas really suggests that there's something good in that. It's like everyone's like, oh, I got to do this too. The challenge is, not everyone is a programmer. And I have heard from people request sometimes for getting some sort of WYSIWYG type UI design system for Flutter. So what I mean is like people have designers, they don't write code at all. And so they're like, well, how does my designer fit into this? Because they can't do anything. Two things I would say to that. Number one, I think that means, number one, we should be exploring on our language side to see if we can make our language easier for people to pick up so that anyone can learn it. Because, with hot reload, like you can see the things create, and it would be great if your designers can just, write this, and then it's a collaboration between that and the rest of your software engineers. And we've seen that happen at Google, but I think some designers outside of Google are still nervous. And the other thing is, like, I think there's a lot of really great ideas with Swift UI, and in terms of like going between the code and the UI. And so I think that in general, like the more people that are in that space, is going to inspire all the companies to improve their product. So I think it's an exciting future for all of us. And there's definitely good stuff there. No question.
Nice, thank you.
Great. Well, Emily, it's been a pleasure having you here. Okay, I think everyone enjoyed our talk today. You're a very, very nice person to talk to. Very nice indeed.
It was great talking to you too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And I hope we can have other interviews another time about more technical questions. Okay?
That'd be great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
May I say one? Can I say one quick thing?
Yeah.
I want to let all of you know that you may or may not know about. There's a program called the Google Developer Experts program. And these are people that are outside of Google that are become experts at a particular technology. You can be an expert in Flutter, you can be an expert in Android, you can be an expert in Google Maps, all different sorts of things, machine learning, Firebase, all these technologies. And so if you find yourself like super excited about Flutter and you start like giving talks or whatever, consider applying to become a Google expert. As it's a pretty cool program, and that means that you could get to travel around Brazil, travel the world. But yeah, it's I just want to let you know if any of you are excited about Flutter, like I'm happy to tell you more about that program as well.
That's very, very nice, Emily.
Great, thanks.
Great.
Now we'll go back to Jacob so he can say the final words, okay?
Bye-bye. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Cleverson. Thank you, everyone.
You are welcome. Algo assim. Eu não sei falar inglês direito, mas tem que ser. Muito obrigado. E eu vou, até ano que vem, eu vou te entrevistar em inglês, você vai ver. Eu não estou entendendo nada, mas eu vou estar falando aqui. Muito obrigado a vocês aí que acompanharam até agora, tá? Depois vai estar editado no canal, tá bom? Obrigado para quem pode enviar as perguntas ali. Hoje nós vimos uma personalidade muito incrível, como que ela chegou até o Google. Espero que vocês tenham aproveitado isso ali e levado como exemplo para a vida de vocês, tá bom, gente? Então, galera, é isso aí. Muito obrigado. Thanks, Emily, mais uma vez. E é isso aí. Obrigado, Balta, aí, por estar aqui, Cleverson, tá bom? E é isso aí, galera. Então, ficamos por aqui e até a próxima. Tchau, galera.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Bye, bye.
Bye.